Hello there. In this video I'm going to show you how you can use the wire dish curve command in Fluid Designer for 3D printing to create objects, 3D printable objects such as the ones that are shown here in the opening screenshot. So if you go to Fluid Designer for 3D printing, if I just pull that window back to open up my workspace, and I do need to open the toolbox here and just move this panel up because there's some parameters here I'm going to use, and the command we're going to use is add curve, and we're going to use this wire dish command. And if I just scroll the center mouse button and rock it back holding the center mouse key down, you can see what the object looks like. And if I just open up the properties panel, we can see the size of this wire dish. So it's about 28 millimeters across and about 10 millimeters deep, so it's actually quite tiny. Now this object is in fact a curve, and we can see that if we look in the outliner panel here. The wire dish is a curve, and we also see the curve icon in the properties panel. That clearly indicates we're working with a curve. And if I just zoom in, I'm just scrolling the center mouse button here, and if I click on the interactive ruler, what we should be able to see is that this thickness is 1 millimeter, and that 1 millimeter is set with this value here. This bevel value is 0.5 at the moment. That's actually the radius, and as I increase it, you can see the thickness increases. So the default setting is a radius of 0.5 millimeter, giving you a thickness of 1 millimeter. Now that's a thickness that should print, particularly if you're printing metal on a 3D printer. So that's set to that value there. Now the resolution value, if I switch my bevel down to 0, you'll see the basic curve that this object is made up. Now if I press the tab key on the keyboard to go into edit mode, we'll end up with 180 control points around the curve. So that's what the 180 value is. Now unfortunately when I do that, I lose my parameters here, so I need to delete that and just add a new curve again, which will just go to the last one that I was using. And if I enter 0.5 again there, that will put my thickness back. Now we want to try and create some interesting shape out of this, and I'm not quite sure what shape I'm going to get because I'm just playing around really. Here if I change the height, clearly I can click on it there, but if I also drag the mouse to the right, I can change it quite quickly. And so I'm increasing my size here to about 30 millimeters tall. So it's not a particularly big object. It's only 3 inches high, but it's 45 millimeters across. So it's a little bit like a kind of bonbon dish, if you like. And if I change the scale value, you'll see that the effect that that has there. I'm now going to change the P value, and as you can see, what we get is more curves here. Now I'm going to push this right up, and notice it does in fact shrink it a little bit sometimes as you change these. I'm just going to push it right up until I get some sort of shape that looks okay. So I'm 5 centimeters across here and nearly 2 centimeters deep. If I try changing the scale there, you'll notice that I do fill in the hole in the middle. So I'm going to try and just fill in the hole in the middle. And so you can see as we change this, we get lots and lots of different patterns. And what you've got to do is literally just play around until you find some sort of pattern that you like. Now once you've actually got something that you like, there's a number of things that you can do. We can pull that back, for example, and if we go to view and front view, oops, I need to go to view and front view again. I'm just panning it across. If I press the tab key on the keyboard to go into edit mode, what you see there are the 180 control points. Now I can manipulate these control points by selecting them first of all. So I'm going to do border select or box select. So if I just press the B key on the keyboard, I can select those control points there, and I can pull those control points up and just change the appearance of my object. And if I just press the tab key to come out of edit mode, you'll see what effect that has had. And I can do the same with the bottom. So if I just go to view and front again, press the tab key to go into edit mode. Now I need to press A to deselect those control points there, and I'm going to press B for box select, and I'm going to select those ones there, and try and be even about the center line. The blue line is the center line, and if I just pull those down now, you can see I can stretch that, so I can change the shape. Now that hasn't worked terribly well, so I'll just do Control Z to undo that. Let's view it from the front again. Maybe I need to select a few more points. So yeah, do A to deselect the ones at the top, and B for box select, and we'll draw around those there and pull them down. I'll just pull them down once this time and press the tab key to go out of edit mode, so you can see the effect of that. What I could also do is I could flatten off the bottom of this. So if I go into edit mode now, if I keep those highlighted, the blue arrow here, the blue arrow is the Z direction. If I press S on the keyboard to scale and restrict my scaling to the Z direction only, Z, so I've pressed Z on the keyboard, I can bring those control points and straighten them up. So S on the keyboard to scale, Z to limit the scaling just to the Z axis, and it's a good idea if you do this 2 or 3 times so that you do get all the points lined up on the bottom there. And when I come out of edit mode this time, what I've got is I've got a more flat base there now. So if we were to print this, it would be stable on the bottom there. Okay, so those are some of the ways in which you can manipulate this object. Let me just show you one more way. I mean, there are others, but if I just go to view and front view again, and just press the tab key on the keyboard, A to deselect all of these points, and B to select the points at the top there. And if I now go to view and top view, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it again, S on the keyboard to scale, and I'm going to pull those points out, so I'm widening up the top of this dish. We can see that over here, we're up to 85mm now, so if I press the tab key to come out of the keyboard, you see I've opened up the top of the dish. Now there's just no limits to what you can do with these patterns, and you will always get objects which are 3D printable, provided you print on a layer sintering process. Either plastic or metal is really going to be the best way to actually produce these. A little bit expensive just at the moment, but prices in the future will come down and you'll be able to design your own objects like this. Now at this point, what you need to do is to export this. Once you're happy with the shape, that is, you can export this as a wavefront object or as an STL file. And if you then just go to Netfab Basic, and this is one that I did earlier, what you will find is that you don't really actually need to do any repairs to these meshes. There'll always be one shell because it's created using parametric equations, so there isn't actually anything to repair, although I'll just run it anyway. But the main reason I brought you in here is because when we zoom into this, what you'll notice is the cross section of this. It's not rounded, it's not smooth. With the default settings you get these flat faces, so if you actually want a much more rounded object, if we go back to Fluid Designer, and exactly the same thing would happen to this one if I export it as the one I'm showing you here. So what we need to do is it's not, you can't see it. Well, let me just I'll just press X on the keyboard to delete that and just add the mesh again, sorry, add the curve again, the wire dish curve again. These were the values, the settings that I had, and it's this bevel value here that is causing this shaping here. So if you actually want it much smoother, rather than the bevel setting of 0.5 here, it's better to set that back to 0. Okay, set that back to 0, so you just go back to the raw curve, and then in the properties panel we want to add a bevel object. Now there aren't any objects listed here, But in Fluid Designer, if you just click on Group Library and go to Template Masters, there are a number of shapes here, cross sections, which you can append and bring in to this work. And so I'm going to just append the, I'll do the rectangular one actually. So you want 3D Templates Masters rectangular cross sections. So if you go to File and Append, just go up through the menu system until you get to the Groups folder. Template Masters, I'm going to use the rectangular cross sections. Select Object, and I'm going to select all of those except that. I just want the cross sections. So if I append those from the library, they've all been brought into my workspace at the moment. So here's my wire dish object, and you'll see that we now have bevel objects here. So if I select one by one, that will apply a square cross section to this, not a rounded one like we had before, a square one. I could have appended the rounded one, and so that's what my dish will look like with the square cross section. And if you export this, and I'll just do it for you, so if you export this as a wavefront object, I'll just export it to the desktop. I'll call it Bowl 02. It will take a little bit of time to export this because there are 767,000 faces now. So by adding that bevel object, I've smoothed off my surface, but I've increased the number of faces quite considerably now. So we'll just let that save it to the desktop, and then we'll just go to Netfab and import it to Netfab, and you'll see what the difference to the surface is. So just give it a few more seconds to save that. Okay, so that's saved to the desktop now. So if I just go to Netfab Basic and import it into Netfab Basic, and I've actually done that already. Now, the reason it took quite a bit of time that is because the file size here is quite large. It's up to about 140 megabytes now, so quite big. But if I zoom in on this now, you'll see that this surface finish is much smoother because of that bevel object that we've placed in there. So taking into account how small this will be when it prints, you'll have a much nicer surface finish on this particular dish. And notice if I do run Netfab Basic here, the repair procedure, just give it a second. As I say, there's quite a large file size. You'll see there is only one shell, and there are no issues with this. There's nothing to repair because of the fact that this has been created using a parametric object. So all of these have been created using that same command, just literally by playing around with the numbers. Okay, so good luck, have a play around with them. Thank you.